Hello and welcome to National Park Wild. I'm Eric, and I'm back with another reaction to a list ranking all national parks. This one is from Trip of a Lifestyle. So I did a little bit of research about the author. So this was written by Lauren Keyes, who is, I believe, the fiance of Stephen Keyes. Maybe wife, I don't know whole thing about the relationship. But one thing that stood out to me looking at their travels is that they live in Florida. And that's interesting because I also live in Florida, so I'm wondering how their rankings are for the parks that are close to home. So let's do as we always do on this type of video and see what the sort of criteria is so we understand what each ranking is like. One thing I noticed right away is the title being definitive. I'm sure they don't mean that, but I guess we'll find out and see if there's a specific score type thing. So they spent most of 2019 in a camper van traveling to a lot of the parks. Okay. So they evaluated them based on wow factor, fun factor, and crowd factor. I'm always fine with these two. These are the things I prize most in a park. Crowd factor I'm a little less keen on because I don't really think crowds are a major player in how much I enjoy a park. I think solitude is an added bonus, but crowded parks very rarely get to me. So they did not include difficulty or expense as a factor. Remote parks in Alaska that aren't connected to road systems have just as much chance as Gateway Arch. Okay, thank you. I already appreciate this right off the bat. I read a similar article from More Than Just Parks who did factor those things in, and I don't think they're really things that should be part of a park experience ranking type thing, because how hard it was to get there should not most likely affect how you feel when you're in the park. So let's see if there's anything else. Certainly colored by their own subjective experiences. Yes, okay, so right off the bat, they seem to explain how everything goes. Alright, so the 7 best parks. So just like the last one that we did, this one is going to be best to worst. So they say the 7 parks are so amazing that we consider them all to be tied for first place. In one of these parks, anywhere near you live, stop reading this article right now, go visit it. Okay, so I'm guessing none of them will be anywhere near where I live. Okay, so Death Valley is number 1. I'm certainly fine with that. So, somewhat short description for a number 1 type thing. I know I can never stop myself from writing a huge blurb about Yellowstone or any of my favorite parks if I'm doing this sort of article. So Death Valley does have great dune fields, rock formations, barren salt flats, I would agree. Excellent photo. Is this theirs? Yes, this is their photo. Okay, so I do like this photo they have in. I'm hoping we see more of those. Yosemite, number 2. Alright, very fair. So, highest for wow factor, that's understandable. Few parks are quite as grand and impressive and truly awe-inspiring as Yosemite, honestly. And yes, it is crowded and all, but honestly, I'm fine with that, because its beauty definitely earned the crowds of popularity. Hawaii Volcanoes at number 3. So, they lived on the island for 6 months. That's interesting. I wonder if they ever got tired of it at a certain point. I'm guessing not, based on the tie ranking, but it's interesting to think about. So Yellowstone at number 4. Yellowstone is my personal favorite, so I'm always happy to see it high up. I know many reasons for it to not rank high up, but I can't help it. There's so much to enjoy at Yellowstone. It's my favorite. And yes, that is a pretty landscape, and then the unique geothermal features. That helps it stand out. American Samoa, the park I've yet to go to. So this has me excited to potentially go there if it's number 5 on a list. So they say technically a U.S. territory, right? Feels like a foreign country, fascinating native culture of its own. Perhaps the most unique. Okay. I would say Gateway Arch is the most unique because there aren't a whole lot of city ones out there that are national parks. That's somewhat a joke, by the way. So, Carlsbad Caverns. Okay. So one thing I've noticed through reading a lot of comments on lists like this is that people seem to hate Carlsbad Caverns. I never see it ranked very high. I have it kind of in the middle of my list. But people everywhere think Mammoth Cave and Wind Cave are superior. In my experience, the caves are better in Carlsbad, and the above-ground stuff is pretty much on par with the other two. So I'm always surprised when people say it's crazy to prefer Carlsbad to another one, but I'm very happy to see it high up on the list. And the idea that you're truly exploring instead of being on a guided tour, I agree with that. That does help a lot. Okay, so Canyonlands at number 7. That makes it the highest ranked Utah park. That is a little surprising, because while I do love Canyonlands, I think many people tend to think one of the other 4 is better. but nothing wrong with it. Canyonlands is in my top 20 national parks for sure, and being top 20 is like being best of the best in a lot of other things for our ranking. And yeah, it is like Grand Canyon all to yourself in a way, though the Needles area is quite different. Alright, so other great ones. Redwood. So, yes, it has good coastline and trees, and you don't see a whole lot of people. I agree with all that. One thing I have to wonder, actually, because I've seen quite a few lists where Redwood is very high. Can someone explain what makes Redwood great to them, for those who think this is one of their favorite parks? Because while I did enjoy the park, so many people tell me it should rank way higher on my list. I believe I had it in the 30s range, higher 30s as opposed to closer to the 30. And I just think, while it is a beautiful park, I didn't think it was quite as awe-inspiring or impressive as many others. So I'm wondering what it is about Redwood that people love that make it, when others rank it low, they seem so surprised. So someone in the comments, if you don't mind putting that. Alright, Haleakala, the other Hawaii park. I'm noticing right now they seem to very much enjoy their beaches. So, I live in Florida. I don't really like beaches that much in Florida. There are exceptions, but beaches are more or less my least favorite scenery. That's part of why Redwood's not as impressive to me as, say, a mountain or desert-based park. That is just me, though. So, I do love the Haleakala crater and the summit, though. That's my favorite part of that park. Alright, Virgin Islands. So, definition of a tropical paradise. The only drawback was economic. Oh, I thought that wasn't part of the ranking, but I guess if it's number 10, it didn't influence it that much. Okay. Grand Canyon at number 11. Okay, that's pretty close to where I have it. Someone put it at number 1, and how can you disagree with that? It's an excellent park. Except for those who think it's just a giant hole in the ground, which, to each their own. And yes, it is crowded, but I actually found there were a few times I went that it was not that crowded. Alright, Glacier at 12. Glacier's in my top 3, so I'm glad it's pretty high up. So, they biked going to the Sun Road. I have not done that. That sounds excellent, though. And Lake Mcdonald's the most iconic spot. Is it? I always thought St. Mary Lake was probably the one that people know from photographs most, but I guess the colorful pebbles are pretty well known. Now, Channel Islands at 13. I don't even know what to say to this, because this might be one of my favorite rankings I've ever seen on any of these, because Channel Islands is right around 13 for me. I find it extremely underrated. And they only went to Anacapa? Oh, okay. I've only been to Santa Cruz, but I've seen quite a large portion of that island. I think, yeah, it is breathtaking. Dolphins are excellent. It is a park. There's something about it, honestly. The wild feel of being on an island like that really does stand out. I like the hikes. And honestly, to those who I was saying Redwood, explain what it is. Honestly, I feel like for Channel Islands, I love the park, but I can't quite put my finger on what makes it one of the best. Perhaps it's the same way for those who love Redwood. However, I still don't think that justifies people saying, how dare you not put Redwood in the top 10. Moving on. Number 14 at being Olympic, that's pretty good. Olympic is a bit higher for me. I think it would be in my top 10. And yes, it does have all of those excellent features. Rainforest, mountains, beaches. Gates of the Arctic. That makes it the highest ranked Alaska park? That's surprising considering I imagine the fun factor would be low given that they most likely didn't do a lot of hiking. Yeah, so they did flight seeing. And yes, the sights are worth it. It is a beautiful park. Though, there are definitely at least 4 Alaska parks I consider much more impressive, but to each their own. Alright, Badlands at 16. That's a very short description for a high-ranked park, but I can get behind it. Badlands is definitely a nice one, though I would put it closer to the 40s range, but that's just how I would go. So Grand Teton at 17, I'm fine with that. I think Grand Teton has recently gotten quite a following and is widely considered one of the very best. And just from what they were saying about crowds, I would have thought they put this higher. Okay, they saw grizzly bears. Yeah, actually, the grizzly bear sightings are a huge draw of crowds. Like, some people go to the park just to see the grizzly bears. Alright, so Capitol Reef at 18. That means it's the second highest of the Utah parks, I believe, so far. Also very interesting, so the 2 least crowded. That implies that Solitude is definitely going to play a pretty big role in major... Oh, never mind. Alright, Zion at 19. Yes, Zion is a very popular one, from my understanding. I have gone most recently in 2020. It was fairly busy, though I was never super turned off by the crowds, and I still love the park. I put it in my top 10 easily, but it is a beautiful one, and I'm glad it made it. Alright, Katmai at 20. Katmai is actually in my top 5, so the main attraction is a swarm of grizzly bears. You know, it is the most well-known attraction, but it is certainly not the only thing to see there. I would honestly say seeing the Valley of 10,000 Smokes is an even bigger highlight of the park for me, though the bear sightings are wonderful. Okay, Rocky Mountain at 21. Thinking about some of the other mountain parks this must rank above, I'm a little surprised. Like, I don't know a whole lot of people who would put Mount Rainier below Rocky Mountain. So, yeah, a lot to see in the Colorado Mountains, that's fair. Alright, Glacier Bay. So yes, the boat tour is the main thing to do there. And they mention you may even witness a giant piece of Marjorie Glacier crack off. It actually seems like it's very, very common for that to happen, and on any day trip you are very likely. So I guess they're underselling a little the you may see it, so people be more excited when they do. And I can respect that. So Sequoia at number 23, that's more or less where I put it, so I definitely can get behind it ranking there. That is a very good photo. I like the way they do that kind of shot. Alright, Dry Tortuga is very high up. I am very happy to see that. That's easily my favorite Florida park, and it does definitely have quite a bit to enjoy. The history... Oh, they mentioned camping. Yep. I wonder if they did the seaplane or the boat to get there. Maybe if they end up seeing this video, they'll comment on some of my tidbits and questions that I put in here. Alright, Kenai Fjords at 25. I think I have it a bit lower, but it's still excellent. And yes, they mentioned Exit Glacier. I also am now wondering if they saw a lot of the fjord parts, the coastal regions. Those are a whole different story from Exit Glacier. Mammoth Cave at 26. Okay, that is very high. I presume they enjoy some caves quite a bit. And Mammoth Cave is definitely my second favorite of the cave parks. I would put it far behind Carlsbad, but I would put it kind of in the 40s range, even though it's still a very nice park. And yes, you do have to schedule. There were reservations when I did it. I don't know if that's changed since the end of 2021, but it was a bit of an interesting experience. Arches at 27. Okay, these people are going to be like bullied off the internet for not having Arches in the top 10. For me, Arches is number 20. People hate me for that. I still think they shouldn't be because 20 is a very high spot. So they mention good hikes and sights from the main road. Yes, the entire surrounding area is beautiful like the rest of the state. Indeed it is. It's awesome, but they like some of the lesser known parks better. That's totally fair. I prefer Canyonlands to Arches. Okay, so North Cascades at 28. That's good. I have not seen a ton of it. I don't know much about goldenrod crab spiders, but I think they were the white and purple ones. And yes, there is quite a bit to see in this one. Great Sand Dunes at 29. A very underrated park, so once again, I'm happy to see it. So, One Trick Pony. This I must disagree with. I think the sand dunes and mountains tell two very different stories. And there's quite a bit to do that's very separate in each one. I've mainly spent time in the sand dune parts because I enjoy the uniqueness of them, but still can love the mountain backdrop. But yes, it is a beautiful and fun national park for sure. Big Bend at 30. Okay, so... Oh, they went during the government shutdown and parts were closed. Now, I believe Balance Rock was closed when I went, but this is actually in my top 10 parks and my favorite desert park. I've mentioned this many times before. I like it more than a lot of people do, because for me, it's like the Yellowstone of the desert in the diversity of both the wildlife and the scenery. Some of my favorite hikes are here, and I do think it's an excellent park. And maybe it would rank higher. I wonder if they've gone back since the, I'm guessing, 2019 visit, because they mentioned the government shutdown. Now, New River Gorge and Great Smoky Mountains being here. So I'll mention New River Gorge. I would put it not quite as high, but it's one of my favorite eastern parks. And yeah, it looks... No, I don't think it looks that much like Great Smoky Mountains. I know it has the forests and all, but you're kind of in a canyon-type setting as opposed to the mountain range type thing you see in Great Smoky Mountains. And yeah, it does have much less crowds. And I went on, like, the bridge day. So, Great Smoky Mountains being number 32, most visited, one of the few mountainous landscapes you'll find in the southeast. Yeah, surrounded by tourist traps, park itself is kept free. I wonder how much that has changed, because clearly a lot of parks have not kept free of it. I mean, you hear about Zion going nuts and all, but let's see. So that marks the top half. Lake Clark at 33. Denali at 34. Oh, man. So these are both in my top 5, and Denali's my second favorite park. And Great Smoky Mountains is one that I did not have a great experience in, but I still think the scenery I saw wasn't top 10 worthy per se, like a lot would say, though I do need to get back there. But I'm surprised to see these two down here because of just how impressive I think these two parks are. But let's see, so another remote park that cannot be accessed by road. Lake Clark contains bright blue glacial meltwater. That's a pretty short description. It doesn't really give me insight as to what they love and dislike about the park, but maybe I'll take a look at their blog post later. Denali is the most well-known Alaska park. They enjoyed it, but they found it to be lacking. What do they mean? Access to the park roads is restricted. Okay, so no frills bus tour. Oh, okay. So they did not enjoy the bus tour. So I've done the bus tour in 2 different ways, 2 different times. I think, even though I'm not technically a huge fan of that sort of thing, as opposed to being able to drive on my own, I don't really have an issue with it because it allows you to access the park road. If it's that or nothing, I'm definitely taking that. And maybe that's not the most fair criticism. But I do feel that being able to experience that great wildlife and the mountain is pretty major. And it's one of my favorite experiences I've had in a national park. So, if Lauren Keyes is watching this, did you go on a cloudy day? I'm just curious. I'm assuming you did, because it's often cloudy at Denali. But I do want some insight on this Denali one, because I don't think I've ever seen it ranked this low on any list like this. Obviously, everyone has their own experiences, but it is one that I wasn't quite expecting to see. Great Basin at 35, I put it probably around there. Middle of nowhere, yeah, it's in Nevada and it's not Las Vegas, so middle of nowhere indeed. Can't argue with that. So they mentioned the caves. Okay, I did not do the caves. I wonder if they did the mountain hikes though. Alright, Crater Lake at 36. I think Crater Lake is beautiful. They do too, so they say it's cool all by itself, but there's so much more to the park. I would say the mountains and the waterfalls. I would have thought this ranked a bit higher based on some of the other things on here. Theodore Roosevelt at 37. Okay. I would put it higher, but a lot of people don't put it nearly as high as I do. Appreciation for American history, you'll get more enjoyment. I don't know. I felt that Theodore Roosevelt wasn't all about the history. It was a park where the seclusion actually helped quite a bit. It really did feel like you were out in the wilderness. You're enjoying the wildlife, the campground, the hikes, the Badlands. And yes, they mentioned the wildlife. And Theodore Roosevelt was a cool president to learn about for sure. Alright, Wind Cave. Honestly, that being anywhere near Theodore Roosevelt is quite surprising to me. So cave's not most impressive they've seen, I would agree with that. I think the history was pretty interesting at that one though, even more so than Roosevelt possibly. A lot of wildlife? Yeah, I saw a herd of bison, which was nice, and there's lots of prairie dogs, that's great. And I think I saw some wild turkeys there. So I guess they enjoyed the prairie dogs, because they talked more about that than like the entirety of Lake Clark and Crater Lake. Alright, White Sands, one of the newest parks. Yes, it does seem very different from the others because of that white sand. Petrified Forest. Okay, I would put it, yeah, around there. So you might think it's a bunch of super old logs, but yes, there is a lot of colorful rock formations that are very unique. And the park loses points for the not being open after sundown. This I must agree with. My experience was somewhat halted because of the policy that it closed, I believe, at 6 when I went. So I was a bit upset that you couldn't do things that a lot of people do in national parks, pretty much all the others, like stargazing and camping. And yes, cops will chase you. Don't ask how we know, don't ask how I know either. Kings Canyon, interesting. I rank this in a similar place, but most love it a lot more. Let's see. Oh, okay. So someone else did a ranking but had not gone into the canyon. So that's like me. Ignore our opinion on this one, just being honest. Yeah, I've done the same thing. Like, even in my most recent ranking, I omitted Kings Canyon because I didn't want to add it in knowing it would just rank really low again. Alright, wow, Bryce Canyon at 42. So, all the other Utah parks were pretty high up, but Bryce Canyon, this is actually in my top 15, I believe. I interesting synopsis here. They just mentioned the hoodoos being weird. Maybe they weren't as impressed by it. So, Everglades at 43. That's fair. I wouldn't put it quite as high. So, they mentioned alligators, boasts a huge coastline with manatees. Yes. At this point, they're just kind of describing what the park is, not as much their thoughts on it. Skyline Drive at Shenandoah, number 44. That's fine. Indiana Dunes at 45. No one's going to agree with that one. I don't know a single person who puts it outside of their top 5. I mean bottom 5, sorry. Not top 5. Many think it's one of the very worst. And I think it's in my bottom 5 as well. So, great place to spend a beach day. I guess they enjoy the beaches more than I do, and that's why it ranks higher. Strange because of its proximity to commercial and industrial activity. Yes, it is. And they don't really have a whole lot to do there. I've done most of the hikes, but if you go on hikes to appreciate natural scenery, there's not going to be a ton that you love, I think. Wow, Acadia below Indiana Dunes. So, to put it in perspective a bit, Acadia is my favorite eastern national park, as in east of the Mississippi, and Indiana Dunes is not quite there for me. So, it's a beautiful coastal park, you should go, but it was dramatically overhyped. Ranked as one of the top 10 by many. Yeah, I don't quite understand that. There's something about it that made it special, and I feel like even I can't fully justify my, 23 ranking out of it. They found it to be overcrowded and underwhelming compared to awe-inspiring parks in the West. Okay, but Indiana Dunes wasn't? That's interesting. I guess there aren't a whole lot of beaches at Acadia, per se. The rocky ones, you really don't go for the swimming. But Sand Beach is still more beautiful than anything at Indiana Dunes, in my opinion. Wow, Mount Rainier that low. I mentioned earlier it being below Rocky Mountain was surprising. Okay, so they went on the kinds of days that I've gone, where it's cloudy and you can't really see the peak of the mountain. Similar to what many see with Denali. I've only seen Mount Rainier outside of the park, but I still think it's a beautiful park, and there's a lot to enjoy outside of just the mountain. The base of it is beautiful, Grove of the Patriarchs, the waterfalls. Black Canyon being this low is sad for me because I love Black Canyon. I did get lucky with wildlife though. But yes, it is dark and eerie, and it's unique walking along the edge of this one, but all canyons are awesome to walk along the edge of. Alright, Joshua Tree. I wouldn't put it quite this low, but alright. Another famous park we enjoyed but felt was overhyped. I would agree. Joshua Tree is small-scale scenery compared to most of the other desert parks. And I'm honestly really surprised that people think it's one of the best in California. I think it's definitely gotten pretty crowded over the years. 2019, people could not fit in the visitor center because of how crowded it was. So they're cooler than the boulders are cooler than the Dr. Seuss trees, I guess, but that seems like a shot at the yucca plants. And I think Joshua trees are awesome to look at, and their abundance, it's kind of like saguaro, which on that note has not been on here. Ah, there it is. I see. So Wrangell St. Elias at 50. I have only seen a small portion of Wrangell, but I would put it at around 25. So it contains mountains and glaciers of epic proportions, so you'll have something amazing to look at on hikes. Yes, you will. Root Glacier is one of the best hikes out there. But you have to take a long and boring drive in, then pay for a shuttle ride and take the same route back. So it seems they did the same kind of thing I did. Honestly, it's not that bad. I think the drive, I agree, it's mostly trees. But I would not say it ruined the experience enough to put it that much lower. That's definitely just me, though. I can understand why that would annoy others. So saguaro, cool when you arrive, yes. But then you realize that's it. Okay, so I think night at saguaro is excellent, so I like they mentioned that. But one issue I have is that I never get bored of seeing the same kind of wildlife or plant life over and over again. I think seeing the cacti never got boring for me. And I guess they didn't see a whole lot of animals, because I got to see owls and coyotes, and that was pretty fun. Okay, so the other Florida park ranked right around where I would have it. And yeah, this park's best is on the water. Isle Royale below it. Okay, so the backpackers are going to come after them. I've gone pretty far into Isle Royale now. I love it. But they mentioned the night sky being the best, but they say hiking was mediocre, there were a lot of bugs. Did they do Stole Trail? I'd like to know, Laura and Keys, if you are watching this, please let me know. what part of Isle Royale did you go to? And if I said Royale by accident at some point, I'm sorry. I'm just not thinking right now. But it's Isle Royale. Did you go to the Wendigo or Rock Harbor area? Because Rock Harbor is Stoll Trail, which is a breathtaking hike. Alright, worst national parks. This is interesting. Okay, so they don't suck. I'm glad they mentioned that. And Pinnacle's a 54. I like Pinnacles way more than others. Everyone hates that I love Pinnacles, but I can't help it. And they like the hikes. I'm so happy to hear that. I really do appreciate that, but I don't know if a lack of Wi-Fi is really a big knock against the park for me. Alright, Congaree. Okay, I respect that Congaree isn't at the very bottom. I like Congaree more than most. Easiest hikes around, I see nothing wrong with that. I love a challenge, but Boardwalk Hike is one of my favorite of the eastern hikes, at least. It's still one that sticks with me. Alright, Cuyahoga Valley. So I'm definitely on board with all the things they have to say here, but they didn't mention the ledges or the waterfalls, and I think those are the highlights. But this is a very interesting sentence to hear about a national park, though I can't entirely disagree with that. Now, any Alaska park ranking this low, I am surprised at. Now, I didn't think Kobuk was by any means one of the best parks. It'd probably be in the 40s for me. But while the sand dunes are impressive, the fact that the rest of Alaska has mountains, and I feel like Kobuk just felt a little closer to home for me, so it wasn't quite as breathtaking. So interesting to see they felt it contained less natural beauty than Gates of the Arctic. I agree, the gap is still much larger than I would expect. Mesa Verde this low? Oh no, what's going on? Alright, Anthropologist's Dream? Yes, if you're into that sort of thing, but that's not to say there isn't natural scenery here. I mean, the Mesa provides a sort of canyon-type view, and I think that's a bit undersold here. Lassen and 59. Lassen is one of my favorite mountain parks, favorite California parks. It's probably in top 20 for me for sure. So everyone wanted to smell an ugly pot of bubbling sulfur water? This is the park for you. Oh, but you love Yellowstone? I don't know. I'm accustomed to the smell of sulfur. Alright, in all seriousness, it's a peaceful place where you can find solitude, yes, but no mention of Lassen Peak or the Geyser Basin hikes or anything outside of Sulphur Works. I wonder how much of this one they've seen. Alright, Guadalupe Mountains at 60, a somewhat divisive park, and yes, it has very challenging hikes. I haven't seen a ton of it, and I'm fine with this description. Voyager's this low is surprising, but I did spend a very long time there. Take one of the inexpensive boat tours. Yeah, boat tours are nice. Bugs weren't that... Okay, yes, actually, bugs... Alright, so they're referring to flies, but I don't know if they did hikes there, but the ticks are the real issue. So many. Alright, Gateway Arch is 62. I'm surprised that Gateway Arch is not 63. And yes, this is pretty much the description that sums up any trip I take to this park. I like the museum, but it's not really worthy of park status. And Hot Springs at the bottom. Now this one, I went in with low expectations. I liked it more than most, but I'm fine with this. So that is the whole thing. Overall, Lauren Keys, if you're watching this, I did like the way it was put together. A few very brief descriptions, but I am curious about some of the time you spent in certain parks. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel for more national park content. I'll see you next time.